Hello all and welcome back. Puzzle Street Ladder. Last time we left off at 1759. We're on a current score of 30 and we're basically trying to see how far we can take it. So in this current puzzle, there are some immediate dangers that I notice. Black just played knight to f5, uncovering an attack on the queen. So it stands to reason that we probably have to move the queen. Um, Otherwise, you know, um, we're just going to lose it and we won't really have any meaningful compensation. So, in this situation, um, as I said before, I think we do have to move the queen, and there are no good checks that I see. In fact, I don't think there's a single check in this position. So, where do we get the queen? Um, can go back, of course. Um, but that I don't think that's really going to achieve anything. I also don't see what Black's immediate threat is after we move the queen to somewhere safe. So I don't think I'm worried about, this knight jumping anywhere or this bishop taking something. Our king is relatively safe. Um, the only thing I see is maybe knight to e3 after the queen moves to c1, for example. But even um, in that case, I think it can be a bit of an issue actually, because black would threaten knight takes g4 there. So I guess we do kind of have to be worried about that. Looking at our available squares for the queen, if we move back, there's that knight e3 idea. And in fact, I think even if we go to e5, for example, there still could be knight e3, um, targeting maybe c4. So really the only other square left is f4. And queen f4 I see has the added bonus of actually pinning the knight. Um, and the knight's being attacked by the pawn. So black will have to figure out a way to dislodge the knight from the position. The only way I can see him trying to escape is maybe knight at 6, after which the queen is actually protected. But with queen f4, we get the added attack on d6. So if the knight goes to h6, we simply take on d6, and that just has to be good. I guess king here after that and take another pawn. Yeah, I think that just has to be good. I don't see any other option. So queen here, and yes, he plays h5. But now we're free to take the knight. Hey, next puzzle. This one's rated 1779. First thing I notice is White's king is nicely tucked in. I don't think this is going to be a checkmate puzzle. Um, the next thing I notice is this queen is awfully short on safe squares. Um, can't obviously take d5, and these bishops do a good job of kind of holding down the fort over here. Therefore, if we try and attack the queen, where does it actually go? We can maybe play knight to c7, but then that blocks off the queen um, from influencing a5. So queen can actually go back to a5 and he's safe. The other way to attack the queen is knight d4, and that looks promising because if the queen goes to a3, which I believe is his only safe square, we have knight to c2, poking the queen and the rook. And not only forking it, I think it outright wins the queen actually. I don't think the queen has any safe squares, or actually he does. D3, my bad. But yeah, we win the rook anyway, so I don't see anything else. We're safe to play it as discussed. Fork the queen and the rook. Okay. Um. So the rook's currently attacking our queen. Um. We have some ongoing pressure on the c6 square. Um. We can actually give this check. But the king, I believe, just steps to g2, and we don't have anything there. The rook is still well guarded, so we can pretty much rule out that check. Um, After checks, we try and look at captures, which are the next which is next on the priority list of forcing moves. So we can perhaps try queen takes rook, but then queen takes rook. I mean queen takes queen, and over there we can maybe try rook to d1 at that point, since we need to distract the rook from guarding their queen. But actually, scratch that. Our queen won't be under attack. Our queen won't be attacking their queen there because it'll already have been captured by the white queen. So, queen takes rook, clearly not the correct answer. To make sense of it, like just to explain that again, queen takes rook, queen takes queen, and if we want to distract the rook from, you know, guarding the queen over here, we're going to have to play rook to d1 check. But at that point, our rook actually isn't attacking the queen, it'll be on d1. So therefore, we can discount that. The other capture is actually rook takes on c6. Um, let's assume queen takes c6, the most logical move. And I believe at that point, rook to d1 actually works because there our queen is attacking their queen. And the rook can't afford to be distracted and then lose the queen. So that looks promising. Let's look at that again. Rook takes c6, queen takes c6, rook to d1 check. But now it's important to realize that white is not limited to only rook takes d1. White also has the move king to g2. But over there, you will notice that the queen and the rook actually converge on c1. So we can actually just take the rook with our rook and defend our queen in the process from the white's queen attack when it's on c6. That looks pretty convincing to me. So let's try that out. Rook takes queen. I mean, rook takes rook. He does take back. If he didn't take back, by the way, we have a deadly double attack on his rook. So this is the force move. And at this point, we try and distract the rook. So rook to d1, it's overloaded. It can't defend the queen and d1 at the same time. So yes, he takes. That leaves us free to take the queen. Okay, this one is pretty simple to be honest. I'm surprised it's rated 1878, but you just have to look at available checks. Black is not castled yet, so that's why his position is so loose. Um, the only good check, I guess, is bishop to b5 check, and that uncovers a discovered attack on the queen. And even if he defends with the knight, which seemingly also defends the queen, it's pointless because the knight is actually pinned and you can still take the queen. The knight won't be able to take back. That looks pretty convincing to me. So here we go, bishop b5. He does defend. At this point, it's important we don't take the knight because then he'll recapture back with the knight and the pin is no longer present. So we take the queen. Okay, so over here, king is looking a bit barren. The queen's attacking on knight, and white has this kind of um concentrated on light squares type of pawn structure. The first thing I see is that there are no good checks, obviously, but we can threaten a good check, and we can also attempt to break down this these three pawns since they're all on light squares. Because really, if we don't have checkmate here, we're just like dead. These two rooks are more than enough match for this knight and this bishop. So um, the key to breaking this down would be actually to take one of the pawns, and that comes with the added bonus of threatening checkmate in one with the queen and the bishop. So um, let's assume bishop takes f3, pawn takes f3. I see a mating sequence there with queen takes f3 check. Um, let's assume king to h2. There he has two options, either king to h2, king to g1. But king to h2 is actually checkmate after queen to f2 check. The king's only squares back to h1, and knight to g3 is checkmate. So that's one road we can go down. Let's recalculate. Bishop takes f3, pawn takes f3, queen takes f3. What if the king goes to g1 this time? Mm, that looks like it could be a bit of a problem. Um, I believe queen back at that point, check. And at worst, I see that we have a perpetual, with the queen shuffling through these three squares at say h3, g3, and f3. And that honestly might be the best option at that point, because if we don't do anything here, um, we're just like completely losing. So yes, um, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king to g1 is the issue. Hmm. I really don't think a draw is best for this puzzle. And right now, I'm noticing something else. This knight's actually in prime position to jump to g3. Yes, and we can get rid of the queen, surprise, surprise, by a forcing move. That's my fault, actually. I don't know why I didn't check queen takes e1. But yes, it is the forcing move, and it is something we should look at first. After rook takes, we actually have knight to g3 check, forking the king and the queen. Um, After that, we'll have a knight and a bishop against a rook, and we also have an extra pawn. Hmm, I think that must be it. I think that gives us sufficient winning chances, especially since the rook can't really come down over here. And after the knight takes the queen, it's actually defending this square, this pawn, I mean. So I'm not really that worried about the rook being able to infiltrate. And really, the only file through which he can infiltrate is the E file. Every other file is blocked either by black spawns or white spawns. So yes, the debate is whether to go for the draw or to go for this knight and bishop plus one pawn versus rook endgame. And I think the latter is the correct answer. I don't see anything else, so let's go for it. Yes, white takes back. Now we fork, king and queen, and we take. All right. I would say that was my first misstep, a little bit, but it doesn't matter. We got there in the end. We've reached 1750, and I believe we had an 1800 puzzle or two. in there in this session. So, yes, thank you for watching, and we'll be back in the next video.